Hello again, drawing lesson 3 from the southwest of France. I'm Greg Pellizzari, and as you recall, the last time we were playing with ellipses, doing ellipses, starting with springs. You recall, we keep it loose, see the movement of the hand, and let's do a drawing of this little roll of tape. So when you're going to do a drawing of a roll of tape, put a central line, right? That's as if there's an invisible line going right through the middle, right straight down through the middle of the roll of tape. It's symmetrical, meaning each side is equal, similar size. There's no difference between left and right. So we can do that. We put a line, forget about all the other lines, this is just a beginning one. And then let's put this as the edge of the roll of tape, and the other here is the other edge of the roll of tape. Okay? And then start by making your top ellipse and look at the angle. I'm going to see a different angle from you probably when you do it, but you just make that top ellipse. Doesn't have to be perfect, just go for it. And then kind of think about how large the roll is, how large it is. And you can always measure by saying, well, is it bigger than the opening? Is it the same? Is it half as big? For me, it's about here. Okay, it's a little bit larger, maybe even like that. We're not going to worry about it. And don't worry about the part you don't see around the back. Make the ellipse all the way. This is the front of it, the front of the tape. Here's the top, right? And just make another ellipse. Go right through, right? And then you make the two sides. One there, and then this. You can put a little bit more emphasis on that bottom part. So you have a basic shape. Okay? Let's do it with a fresh piece of paper now. All right? Start by, let's put it a bit further over. Okay, start by making a central line. Let's do it right here. I'll do it here. A central line. Go right down. Doesn't have to be perfect, just a line. And then decide how big do you want to make it, because you can draw it as big as you want. Just because it's this large in actual reality doesn't mean you can't make a little tiny one, like this big. Or a very large one, larger than life. But let's do it about the same. Okay, so let's see how big it is. Measure it. Just approximately, make a couple of dots there, and then descend a few lines there. Right, that's the sides of the tape. Okay, now decide where you're going to start it. Right, here and here, and then try to visualize the opening. How big is it? Right, let's not get into too much measure. Let's just make the ellipse. First of all, remember you're scribbling that kind of rotating of the arm, and then bring the crayon down, okay? And then another one somewhere about here, would you say, for the bottom? Let's not be too exact, let's just think about the idea. And make the ellipse going right through, as if it was invisible. Right? Now you have the general shape, the two sides, the ellipse, right, and the top. Now if you want to get the thickness and the shading, we'll talk about that later. But one thing you can do is practice the idea of making the ellipse, right, but putting the most pressure at the bottom part, because you don't want to see it in the back. So, you see, keep making the whole kind of idea of the ellipse. If you only try to do this and go back, you won't have that smoothness, because the idea is that you're continuing to make those kind of spring shapes, right? So, right, but more pressure on the bottom. And up here you can put pressure on both, and we can say the ellipse is here. And there's the tape. And it has a certain thickness maybe, right? And the same thing can go the same way that you put more pressure on the bottom ellipse, like that, just to show the bottom of the ellipse, of the tape. You can do the same thing with the shading, because we can shade that way. Right? Doesn't have to be perfect, you just try to shade it. Yeah? So you make the shadow. You know, you have to practice that, kind of like, there's your lips. And then practice the idea of the shadow. Right. Right. If the shadow's on the other side, do it on the other side, and you have your shadow. That's one way to do a shadow. Right? You can do that with all kinds of things. Just the idea that you make a shadow by continuing with the shape of the form, the elliptical shape. And you can keep insisting, you know, keep insisting. And you'll notice that the shadow is here on this side. And on the inside, the shadow is on the right side because the light's coming from here, right? So here's where the shadow is. And you can do it more slowly if you're afraid of. And you know, just make the shape of the ellipse, the total shape, but only bring the crayon down where you want to. And so here, I'll bring it down here and I'll stop it where I want to. But I'm trying to make the full movement with the arm and only descend it where I want to. And then you can reinforce the shape. Right? You can reinforce the shape. So the idea is you have a shadow here and a shadow on the inside. But always doing it with this ellipse. Now this is just an exercise to conceptualize the idea of a cylindrical form in shadow. It's not perfect because we're just going really rapidly here, you know. You can go really rapidly and keep doing it. And eventually you can put your crayon right on the edge and pull it across. But with the same idea of the ellipse, you know. You know, so we're talking about forms like this. You know, pressure and then release. You know, but it's better if you make a full form. Okay? Now let's get a cup. Something else. Let's do it without the handle to make it easier. Yeah, you don't see the handle, do you? Well, let's do that. Okay, a cup. Always with a symmetrical form, you can draw the central axis. The axis, the meridian, meaning the center. The center. The part that divides it in two, if it's a symmetrical form. Divides it in two. That's the meridian. Right? You can erase the lines later. You do them very light. And then you decide how large is the form. Like that. Half and half, right? Distance half and half. You can measure it with your pencil if you want. You know? Half and half. And then look at the ellipse, right? We're not going to measure too accurately here. We're just going to start by sketching now and see if you can make the form. First, just visualize the form. Let your arm do the motion. And then little by little you descend your crayon. Let's see, you can even move the whole body with it a little bit, you know, back and forth. Right? And then what do we have? For a cup, we have this half circle. In this case, it's a half a sphere. Right? So, where does it start? From the half point, right here. Right? Right there. Halfway point. So that means from here to here is the size of the diameter of the sphere. That's the diameter. And so what we do is we find this and we make a circle. But when you're making a circle, do it lightly. Make the circle, right? And then a bit stronger on the bottom, right? and then go for your ellipse. Now we're doing this really like a sketch, right? Just to show you the idea of a cup. And then for some reason, there's a little part on the bottom to hold it flat that is about this wide in my case, you know? So you put the two sides there to find that little bottom flat part. And then make another ellipse. And don't hesitate to make it as if you could see through the cup. Just make that ellipse, right? Now you have the sides of the bottom of the cup, right? You have the two sides of the cup, and you have the opening. And then you can play around with the idea of the shadow. Don't worry about it being perfect. We're just doing sketching here. Later we could, get in there, try to find the absolute edge, But the idea is that you're following the idea of the sphere, right? Right? As it goes down. Right? And it meets that. And then we have maybe a little bit more body in the bottom, so we could keep working it, and then work the shadow on the actual stand of the cup, right? And then on the inside here, this comes around, right? And in here, there's another shadow. It's this circle here, this actually an ellipse that rejoins this one. This one rejoins this one. This one rejoins this one. And as it goes down, it rejoins this. So it has to come to here. This is just to give you the idea of what the cup, how the cup is seen in 3 dimensions, right? And you can finish it off. This, we're down here, shadow, shadow, shadow on the inside, shadow on the outside, shadow on the inside, shadow on the outside. And then if you keep working it, you can work it the other way and come up here, and then from that edge, it comes out. From that edge, it comes out. From that edge, it comes out. From that edge, it comes out, etc. Okay? Now, obviously, we're going to slow down and find the actual final form, which is there, and which is there, and which is there. Right? Cup. Simple cup. And then you can always play around with the ellipse of the shadows, because this is casting a shadow from a light that is up here. And that shadow will come across to here. There's actually 2 shadows, one from daylight and one from this light. You can see the different shadows. Right? Daylight and the artificial light. So we can start with the artificial light. And it's an ellipse, like the cup. And then you can fill in that shadow. And you can come across the other way and cross over those lines if you want. It's just, we're making just the idea of shadow. We're not going to fill it in. I mean, we can fill it in like this, but the idea is the dynamic of the shape of the shadow, which is also elliptical. And then the larger shadow is up here somewhere, isn't it? Not sure how it is for you. Somewhere in there. Okay? Small shadow. Larger shadow. Right? And then you can keep working it. You can work the shadow, work it. And work it even more. And more. But it's always finding where it goes. Right? Sketches. We're not worrying about too much about the precision for the moment. Okay? Shadow on the left, on the exterior, shadow on the right, on the interior. We're not going to erase, we're just doing sketches. Okay? And then reinforce the top ellipse if you want. Okay.